And so we will be live in 1 second. And hello, everyone, and shalom, and salam, and welcome to the wonderful Dannielle Sharkan, who is our guest today with a lovely brand new picture book out named Sharing Shalom. So Dannielle, welcome to the program. And before I forget, I'm Mel Rosenberg, and I am the host of the Children's Literature channel of the New Books Network. So Dannielle, shalom to you.
Shalom, Mel. Thanks for having me.
And we pray for peace, and it seems to be running between our fingers. And yet you've created this beautiful book. Tell us about it.
Thank you. Sharing Shalom. I wrote it about 3 years ago, when there was a lot of hate against different ethnic groups going on, and I realized that Jewish groups didn't really have a lot of representation, and there were a lot of things happening. I thought back to when I was a kid, and there wasn't really a lot that I experienced, thankfully, but there was one time that I did witness something, and so that sort of got the ball rolling, and I used inspiration from current events to create Sharing Shalom and a vision of how I would like to see the world respond to Jewish hate.
And it's based on a true story that you heard about, you knew about, you saw.
Yes, I was about in 3rd grade, and at my Hebrew school, there was vandalism, and so we couldn't go for a week or two. And I didn't really see it, but I heard about it in the news. We didn't really talk about it at all in the community or my family. And we went back to Hebrew school, and everything was just as it was. And so during those times, and I think in terms of just coping, a lot of Jewish people don't like to talk about hate crimes, and I feel like that's changed since October 7th, which is, I guess, a positive from a negative. But I felt 3 years ago that I had a story to tell, and instead of keeping it quiet, let's talk about it and look it in the face and try and rally support for us and build bridges and yeah, it's a hopeful message of peace and community and acceptance and pride.
It's a hopeful message in a time where it's very difficult to be hopeful. So in this interview today, we are going to try to be hopeful. I'm in Israel. It's particularly difficult here, and you're in the States, and for Jewish people, there's a huge rise in anti-Semitic crime. And your book is prescient. Is that the word? It calls out, but also with a, I wouldn't say happy ending, but with a positive resolution. Show us the gorgeous book. Talk about the illustrations.
Yes. Yes, the illustrations are done by Selina Alko. She's also a Jewish American Canadian woman with a Turkish and Ashkenazi background. And she was inspired, the color palette was inspired by her trip to Israel the summer a year and a half ago. And it's this beautiful colors, blue, bright, bold. It's one of the favorite scenes.
And
the back cover.
So we have to have her on our show. She's brilliant. Can you read a little bit from the book?
Sure. Start from the beginning.
Wherever you like. It's your show.
Okay. Some kids were on the swim team, others took dance or practiced martial arts. Lila went to Hebrew school at her synagogue. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she learned tales of mighty kings and quick-witted queens, stone-hearted pharaohs and defiant princes, ravaging floods and toppling towers, and heroes who overcame the impossible. Lila loved learning Hebrew. She guarded her machberet, her Hebrew notebook, like a treasure map.
Is Lila you, Danielle?
It's a fiction, but sort of based on me.
I don't want you to read the whole book because I'll get into trouble with Holiday House.
Okay.
Just talk about the resolution. We want people to buy the book. It was just published, Holiday House, fantastic artwork, based on a true story with a positive outcome. And so I urge people listening or watching to run out and buy your book. A few words on your literary career. Did you start writing at the age of 4? Talk about yourself, Danielle. You're from Chicago?
From the suburbs of Chicago. I've always liked reading and writing. When I was in 3rd grade, my dad encouraged me to enter a newspaper contest, and I got 1st place. So that was my first prize for Halloween. It was a scary story about spooky ghosts. Yeah, so that was a big boost. And then when I was in high school, we had an assignment to write children's books, and I was very excited about that. And my teacher was like, "Oh yeah, you could send them to publishers." I've had a few students get published, so I was really big into that. I didn't get published then, but it was still like a seed that was planted. And during the pandemic, I sort of found a way to entertain myself
Oh,
and just delve
Danielle,
deep in.
hold on. There's like a few years here in between high school. I mean,
Yeah.
you look like you're 18, but you're not, probably. There's a couple of years missing. What did you study in university? Did you work in
Yeah.
the
Okay. Yeah. I sort of have a long story there, but so I went to McGill University in Montreal.
Canada?
And that the first year was, yeah, it was very a unique experience. They had a modern Orthodox, big modern Orthodox community, and I had never really been part of that. And that was sort of in the
Kind of
university.
lost you.
So I had been,
We're breaking up, Daniel.
are
Can you
we
hear
back?
me? I
I
hope
can
we're
hear you.
back.
Yeah.
Okay. So you went to McGill and there was a modern Orthodox Jewish community, and
It was very spiritual, and I also had gone to Israel for the first time the year before, and I knew I wanted to go back. So
you should have called me
I should have. That would have been great.
next time.
The next year I went, and it was 2001, and that was a pretty big year. The second Intifada happened, but it was also an amazing year. I met a lot of friends and learned a lot about Israel and Judaism. And so my journey to learn and to and just to feel more Jewish and to find my Jewish pride started around then. And I returned to Israel for another few years and did another program and internships and just couldn't really get away. But then eventually I'm like, okay, I need to find a career, and I decided to become a teacher, and I spent a year in New York. And then I went back to Chicago and started a teaching career for about, moved to California, and then made it to Colorado. So I've been here now about 7 years and been teaching off and on. And during the pandemic, I knew a friend who published, and I asked her about it because I had some extra time, was interested, and excuse me, she sort of showed me the ropes. She's joined 12 by 12, go on Kidlit Facebook, Kidlit 411, find a critique group. So I did all that and I got published. So
Listen, to get published is 1 in 3,000. And not only did you get published, but Holiday House is one of the best publishers out there. So you keep skipping, and I keep rewinding you. And your career has been remarkably successful in a short period of time. So it was COVID time, and you connected with this girl, and also that CBWI or not? You
yeah,
didn't
I
mention.
joined her too. Mm-hmm.
And then within a year or two, you're already getting a publishing deal. Run us through this, please.
Yeah.
And an agent, top agent, Charlotte Wenger. How did all this happen?
So
Take your time. This is
yeah,
important.
okay. I started writing, and originally I liked funny stories, goofy stories. My daughter loved those, so I was reading them to her, and I wasn't really getting a lot of feedback or interest from agents, or my critique partners were like, oh, this is cute, things like that. I tried to rhyme, and I didn't understand that I didn't really know rhyme as well as I should, but it was still fun for me. And then Own Voices was becoming popular, and so I said, okay, I guess I'll write some Jewish stories. And so once I started writing those and sort of mining back into my experiences, then I started getting interest, and I actually got a publishing offer from a different book, but it was not a big publisher, and I had some mentors. I was participating in some contests, and I kept meeting new authors, and they're like, well, you could maybe hold off, check out the illustrations. And I was just so excited. I got interest, and I was ready to just say, oh yeah, print it. I want to be a published author.
Mm-hmm.
And then with the same story, I got chosen for a PB chat mentorship. And Elisa Boxer, sorry, she loved the story. And so she was my mentor for the summer. And that really pushed me. I wrote a few new stories and, concentrated on my craft and writing. And that's when I wrote Sharing Shalom as well, or finalized it. And there was a pitch contest for sometimes editors are looking for new authors to represent, and it was savvy authors, I believe. And so I pitched a different story, which was actually like it was Ellie the Expert. So I pitched that. That was my fun story that didn't really have a lot of Jewish context, but through that contest, and this was towards the end of that mentorship, that summer, 2021, I got an offer of representation because the agent, she liked, it was like sort of a gardening, planting sort of fun story. And she didn't know any of my other books, but she did book by book. So I asked around, and there's like, book by book isn't the best type of agent because you're not like guaranteed for a career. So sort of like try to nudge the other agents who you've submitted to. So I did that, and I got 2 more offers that way. So Charlotte was one of them, and I really loved the types of books that she worked on, and we're all picture books pretty much now. I think she has more middle grade books, and it was just a sort of no-brainer, and I went with her, and then we started sending out that original story. We didn't send out Sharing Shalom first. We sent out the other one for a few months, and that one did not get picked up. And then I think Sharing Shalom was the second book that we sent out to editors. And the next day we had an email saying, "Oh, this is great. I'm interested." Not from Holiday House, from a different publisher. And eventually that editor couldn't convince their marketing team. So in the meantime, the editor from Holiday House reached out to us and said, "I really love this story, but can you make a few edits and revise and resubmit?" So it was very, it was like a very serious time where I was like, okay, this could be it. And eventually she loved the edits, and so luckily she bought it. And then
Was that a period of angst for you?
yeah,
Because you have interest, you're not sure whether it's gonna be a yes. You have to edit, and sometimes you don't know exactly
for
how
sure.
to fulfill their request.
Exactly. And it was, they either say yes or they say no. And luckily she said yes. I've had some other R&Rs that said no. And it's pretty big letdown because you're almost there. And if you feel like you had a little direction or a little bit more this or that, then maybe it could pass, but you don't really know why it didn't. So
Yeah, just the R&R is the revise and resubmit. And yes, those are hurtful. But I'm talking to you, and you're so congenial. Do you realize that the path that your trajectory is extraordinary? People, one of 3,000 manuscripts gets published, um, and within just a year or two, you had an agent, several wanted you, several publishing houses wanted you. So do you realize how talented you are?
thank you. Thank you very much. I also want to say that I joined this awesome critique group, so they really helped as well. There's about 20 people from all over in the world, and so you just get a lot of good feedback. And I wish I could say I did it on my own, but it does take a community. And but thank you. I think that this story, because there aren't a lot of children's books about anti-Semitism and about hard topics, I think that even
Yeah, but
before October,
you've taken a difficult topic and you've turned it into a wonderful, a positive looking. I mean, it starts out with vandalism of the synagogue, and people are terrorized, and it ends up with human kindness, right? A few words on the resolution, without going into details.
yes, thank you. Yeah.
And now you have another book coming out that I know about. That's going to be published in March with Apples and Honey, right?
Yep.
And I'm not sure it's on pre-order. I just say that the book Sharing Shalom is out for the past month or two, and it's available and it's gorgeous. Show us another spread or two,
Okay.
Danielle.
This is the big scene of the vandalism.
But it ends in acts of human kindness to repair the damage and to bend and to create bridges.
Yes.
And Ellie Eggplant is Ellie the eggplant expert. Eggy the else plant. What's it called?
Ellie the expert.
Ellie the expert. The egg is an eggplant, right? And
Um,
it's not a Jewish book, it's a culinary book. And it's a
so
funny book.
it ended up having a Jewish twist because I got a critique from an editor, and she asked me where the idea came from. And being in Israel, I learned more about eggplant dishes than anywhere else. And so,
We're an eggplant country.
exactly. And I remembered the first time I tried an eggplant, I think my mom was like, "Oh, this is an eggplant." And I'm like, "What? What's that?" And it was just sort of like a confusing name. It didn't look like an egg and it tasted weird. And I was like a little baffled from it. So I'm like, okay, like maybe other kids, now it seems like eggplants are a little more common, but I'm like, maybe other kids also get that, confusion of like, why is this called an eggplant? And so I did some research and I found out why. And um, some original eggplants that were brought here did sort of look like eggs, but not the big purple ones. So yeah, I actually submitted that myself to Apples and Honey before I got the agents, I believe. And so the crazy thing about the story is that the same week that I got the offer for sharing Shalom, I also got an email for Ellie the Expert, which was like crazy because what are the odds of getting two book offers in the same week? But I did have an R&R also for Ellie the Expert, so there was still this period of uncertainty. When I did talk to the editor, she said she was just a little bit more upfront about like, oh, if you're okay with these sections and changing them, then like we're good with that. So it was a little bit less nerve-wracking.
A few words about Ellie. Is she a
Yes.
detective? Is she a chef? What is she?
Ellie is a little, she's a girl, probably in like second or third grade. And she's a little bit like Amelia Bedelia. She takes things literally. Um, she gets an eggplant seed to plant for her class cooking contest. And she needs to discover what exactly an eggplant is. Is it an eggplant or is it an egg plant? So she thinks it's an eggplant. And chaos ensues a little bit. And there's a lot of fun illustrations and sort of silly scenes in the story that is a very nice contrast from the seriousness of sharing Shalom. I get a fun, loving story with Ellie the Expert.
Wonderful. And to continue this alliterative culinary metaphor, what do you have cooking on the back burner?
So I've got a bunch of stories that we've sent out, and we'll see what happens.
And
Mostly
you don't
Jewish.
mostly Jewish stuff.
Yes.
Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. The world needs more Jewish stories. And so, without going into politics, um, are you still optimistic? You know, Sharing Shalom is a book of optimism. There's vandalism, and people come together to rectify it. Um, is that how you feel today? Would you write the same story today that you wrote 3 years ago?
Yes, good question. So after October 7th, I was a little bit, distraught, and I'm like, wow, is this gonna make any difference? Like seeing the reactions of the communities and the world. And my agent was like, even if there's one person that is affected by this book, like you did it, it's worth it. So I guess that's the message of hope, is that you need a vision and to manifest. And if you start young, maybe it will inspire people and they'll remember this. And being here in Colorado is really different than where I grew up, and there's not a lot of Jewish people. And I've been meeting people who haven't met Jewish people, and I'm like, wow, this is odd, but this is also a good resource. Sharing Shalom also teaches about Jewish culture and humanizes it. And so I hope that it will make it into schools and libraries, and people will understand a little more about
It,
Jewish people.
it seems like a perfect story for PJ Library.
Yeah, I think PJ Library prefers not to have tough topics for picture books, maybe like middle grade books. But yeah, that would have been great.
Okay, you made a mistake, PJ. This is a wonderful book. Okay, so we're going to close soon. We wanted to limit this to half an hour. And so I guess that my question now is, given your huge and rapid success, what advice do you have for the up-and-comers, for the Ellie's on the way?
So everybody says it, and it doesn't feel like it at the time. But if you just keep going and keep writing and keep submitting
I
and
need
keep
I need
trying.
I need more advice from you, Danielle, because you just like like you come to an airport and there's a fast track and everybody else is waiting, for 5, 10, 15 years, and you take the fast track and then you say, oh, sometimes you have to wait 15 years, but you didn't.
Mm. Okay, so think about your lived experience and think about a story that only you can tell. And I feel like those universal truths will hit other people. Try and write about feelings, like try and make the reader feel for the main character, and be hopeful and teach something, find something that hasn't been out there before. That's another big one. Use comps, but make it your story, and get critique partners, and enter contests. That's something I didn't really talk that much about, but I started with doing a lot of contests, like getting more and more feedback and feeling like you're on the path of other people also becoming successful by publishing, and then suddenly you have your critique partners are fellow authors, and you just keep getting better. And just, if you're passionate about something, go for it. And
Yes, no,
hone all your
go ahead.
just focus all your energy on that, and try and figure out like what's working, what's not working, and really just workshop it, get a lot of feedback, and try and do something special. Like, I think there were two stanzas sort of that are very lyrical in this story. The first one, I think, is the one that really just made a big impact when the editors read it, because it opens up with like a big whoosh. So that's what I
So to sum up, write with passion and write stories that you are the one to write. Submit the contest even though you'll probably fail, and maybe because probably you will fail, which is an opportunity then to improve.
Mhm.
And whatever the ingredients are in your souffle, you seem to have succeeded very amazingly in a brief period of time. So show your wonderful book again, Sharing Shalom, a book full of optimism, wonderful book by Dannielle Sharkan, illustrated by Selina Alko, and we have to have her on the show. And this has been great talking to you. And
Thank you so
I am, again, Mel Rosenberg, the host of the Children's Literature channel of the New Books Network. And it's been great having you on the show, Danielle. And we
Thank you
finished
so much.
in 31 minutes as promised.
Perfect.
So regards
Bye.
from Eretz HaKodesh to Artzot Habrit.
Shalom, shalom. Toda rabah.
Shalom. Sharing shalom. Bye-bye.
Bye.